What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the GSN Sports Network podcast, episode 100. You've been with us for this long, okay? We finally made it to 100 episodes. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being with us through this entire journey. I'm here joined with our college football senior analyst, Sam Vitale. Sam, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing good, John. Good to be here with you.
Oh, man, it's just a pleasure. And it's been a while. We were talking about that in the pre-show. How do you feel being back?
I feel good being back. There is a ton to talk about. This has been one of the weirder college football seasons 4 weeks in here. So I'm excited to see how it pans out the rest of the way.
Yeah, it's just like anything else, especially football season is no different, but it's here. We're already in week 5, and it's just nuts that we're already here. It flies by in the blink of an eye. The season's going to be, it would have came and gone. And that's just the nature of the beast. So I guess what are we looking at going through 4 weeks of college football, just looking at it from the broad scheme of things? How are we looking? What are some of those crazy things? And then we're going to dive into some more specific things here shortly.
I mean, to sum it up in just a few bits, it's been absolutely nuts, man. You're talking about teams like Notre Dame, who in week 1 went to A&M, shocked the nation. Then they turn around and they lose to NIU by a field goal. Crazy.
Right.
Like that. You're talking about Clemson and Georgia neutral site week 1, big noon showdown. Well, it wasn't the big noon. That's a Fox thing, but ESPN's noon showdown. 14-point spread all summer. That's what everybody was talking about. 14 points. Really? Georgia's going to boat race them by 14 points. Well, then they went and they handled business, and now Clemson actually looks pretty good. You had another big showdown, I believe, week 2. Tennessee at NC State. That was just a touchdown spread, and I think Tennessee ripped off a 50-point lead on them by the end of the game. I mean, and now you're talking about a Tennessee team that all summer everybody was saying, oh, they're going to be on the bubble. Now people are talking about, could they win the SEC? I mean, not just to mention that. Did Vanderbilt start 3-0? When has that happened before? I mean, everybody and their mother had Virginia Tech going into Nashville there in week 1 and covering that spread against Vanderbilt it was a 2-touchdown spread, and Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
I mean, just weird, man. Just super weird. Well, not just that. I mean, I didn't talk much other than just the Pac, or not the SEC right there, but teams that were formerly in the Pac-12, I think through week 4 have like an 80% win rate. A conference that was dissolved. I mean, just a weird season, man. So, but I'm just hopeful that it keeps up like this. It has been quite entertaining, and it's kept me on my toes.
Yeah, it's definitely ramping up to be a hell of a season, and it's just with all I call it the conference carousel. Not to be confused with the coaching carousel, but you got a lot of different teams in different conferences, as we know, especially talking about the Big Ten close to home, and then not to mention that we're also going to get into later in the season, not tonight. We're going to talk about how the 12-team format with the college football playoff is going to play a role as well. So there's a lot to really dive into that we're not going to have time for tonight, unfortunately, but definitely on the GSN College podcast coming out very soon here, post week 5. It's going to be, we're going to dive into that and dissect it in detail. So I want to talk to you about Michigan football. What is the current state of Michigan football under Sherrone Moore? That was a big talking point that I had on my list that I wanted to ask you, because it was supposed to be, and I could be speaking out of turn here, it was supposed to be a continuation of the Jim Harbaugh era of Michigan football, which we know Jim Harbaugh worked very close with Sherrone Moore in their coaching tenures. And now Sherrone Moore has taken the reins. And we haven't really seen the same Michigan. There's been some question marks at the quarterback position and other elements of the offense, and even the defense too, if you want to get into that. But there's a lot of differences that I don't think Michigan fans foreseen going into the season. What do you think about it?
No, I mean, ever since the national championship game, from inside the Michigan fan base, kind of the motto was nothing's changed. Everything's the same. We just got new faces and new names. That's kind of been proven wrong by, I guess, everybody else outside of the Michigan circles and Michigan fan base, it's not looked exactly how we thought it would. If you look at a lot of our starters right now, especially on the offensive line and the defensive line, they're really not that new. They just weren't starters last year. But if you go and you look at their snap counts, pretty experienced guys, which is why Michigan and everybody around the program was very convinced that it was just going to be plug and play. And we were proven wrong. Very easy to see that given the week 2 matchup. In Michigan's defense, not that they really need any defending, it was Texas that boat raced us there in week 2, who's now the number 1 team in the country. So, um, you know, though there's a lot of new guys that have to step up and they were put in a very, very tough situation in week 2, I think it's gonna come into form. But that's quite a division in Michigan circles and the fan base as to whether or not things are going to pan out with who's playing right now. So that's been, I'd say, something very frustrating for me as a Michigan homer and a Michigan defender and a Sharon Moore stand. So overall, I like where the program's headed. I thought this week's win against USC was massive. I've really never seen so much negativity around beating the 11th ranked team in the country all week. All week, I had to listen to people say 32 pass yards. Really? I stump them every time I say, we threw the ball 12 times. How many passing yards do you think we were going for? I mean, we're 7-0 in the last 7 games when we throw less than 100 pass yards. I got some stats up right now. 3 games against Ohio State. In 2023, we outrushed them by 49. 2022, we outrushed them by 109. In 2021, we outrushed them 297 to 64. This is the Big Ten. So if you're in SEC circles, if you're in formerly Pac-12 circles, ACC circles, and you want to talk about the air raid, you want to talk about just launching the football across the field all game, that's fine. That's your prerogative. It's not how it's done in the Big Ten. That's not how games are won in the Big Ten. It's not how it's been done, especially in the last few years when Michigan's had control here. So the other thing I like to tell people, in the last week when they tell me, well, that's just not going to work against Ohio State this year. We didn't play Ohio State. We played USC and we won. We've got the rest of the season to get this thing down pat. And the other thing, if you look at the game plan, like the numbers I just broke down for you, that's how we beat Ohio State the last 3 years. I'm not saying that Michigan's just going to go into Columbus this year and we're going to run all over them. I'm just saying, all these people who think that Ohio State's going to hang 50, 60 on us, I wouldn't bet your money on it.
Yeah, I mean, you got haters. You got haters that are going to say, "Oh, Ohio State's going to come into this brand new Michigan regime and essentially take over and run all over them." You're saying that's not the case.
I'm not necessarily predicting a Michigan win right now. If you want to say, here's the thing, there's some pretty general areas where we can improve that outsiders are correct. Our quarterback play. That's the key right there. That's the biggest one. It's glaring. Okay. Yeah, no, we don't have a top 30 quarterback in the game right now. Alex Orji, even it was even said in Michigan circles on podcasts this week, he's not a passer, he's a thrower. If you're a baseball guy, you understand that. He's a thrower, not a pitcher. Okay. This is true. He's just one position. There's only one quarterback on the field at all times, and he doesn't control every single thing. Look at what our running game is doing. Look at what even though Donovan Edwards is having the worst season that he's had here, he's still scoring. He's still scoring. He fumbled on Saturday, and everybody absolutely lost their minds over that. That was his only fumble in his career at Michigan. Okay, so when you think that the sky is falling, this is just what happens when you've been at the top. These little things happen. And I want to tell everybody, this is not Nick Saban's Alabama run. We don't just freak out when we have an imperfect game. That was different, and that's just not going to be repeated. If anybody could do it, it would be Kirby Smart at Georgia. But as Michigan fans, we just don't have the luxury to go in here and say, yeah, I mean, we didn't blow out USC at home. And unfortunately, a lot of the comparisons are going to be to teams like Ohio State. They're in the business of clowning people. They're in the business of beating Akron. What was it? 70-6, something like that. We don't do that. We're never going to do that. If that's what you want us to do, you should pick a different team to follow. It's just not going to happen. But if you've been a Michigan fan for more than 20 minutes, you should have a good understanding of what's going on here, and just the game plan that we're putting in place. You should also understand that this week we look ahead at Minnesota. Though Minnesota's got a really good defense statistically through 4 weeks, I think they've only given up 12.6 points per game this year. This should be Alex Orji's coming out party as far as his cannon goes. This should be the time where Michigan tries to get up early, tries to get up big, and let's find some plays. Let's find some routes that Alex Orji's comfortable passing to, because we've not really given him that chance. When our strong suit is running the ball down people's throats and we're playing in these tight games, what quarterback is going to be comfortable trying new plays, throwing new routes? Well, we should have that opportunity this week. I really, really like the matchups that we have this week. And I can really see Alex Orji going off. Now, when I say going off, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Alex Orji is going to throw for, I don't even know if he's going to throw for 200 yards, but I want to see him look better this week. I want to see him look more comfortable. And I'm just really excited to see if we can pull that off. It's not supposed to be a big test this week, but it's the Big Ten. And I don't put anything past a Big Ten team. It's a tough conference. There's no gimmies here.
Yeah, and it's not getting any easier with all the additions that have been made to the Big Ten. And I think once in Michigan fans, this is what I speak for Michigan fans when I say this. They've won the Natty in the modern era with NIL being in existence and all that. You have the team allegiance. You built a name for yourselves. You've done it over, the course of almost 200 years now. So having that being said, Michigan fans, the sky could fall. The sky could fall, and Michigan fans could still be happy. They can hold their heads high because they accomplished the highest goal of winning the national championship in the last one before the 12-team format, mind you. So it makes it even more lucrative, I think, in a sense, to make it and to win it in in the 4-team format with the college football playoff. So there's a lot more coming out of Michigan. They're not done yet. I think they have a lot of building to do. And with the win over USC last week, that was a proving grounds win. So they got Minnesota on the clock, and we'll have to see what comes up. Let's move on, though. Let's talk about the UNLV NIL scandal. What's going on here? I've heard about it. It's been in the news. Hasn't really been touched on that much, in a lot of news networks. Sometimes they touched on it, but this is kind of NIL rearing its ugly head. And I thought this was going to happen a lot earlier than this with something similar to this scenario, but it came late, and it is what it is. Tell me a little bit about this, and how's the landscape of NIL and college sports going to change following this?
So let's back up just a little bit here. This is not exactly that new. Most folks probably wouldn't know this name. Jaden Rashada, 5-star quarterback in the 2023 class. He was committed to Florida. He was down to 2 schools during his recruitment. He was down to Miami and the University of Florida. Miami had promised him roughly $9.5 million in NIL to commit. Florida had promised him roughly $15 million as a junior in high school to commit. So what does he do? He commits to Florida. They don't give him the money. They don't give him anywhere near what they said they were going to give him. So he sits out. He transfers to Arizona State, plays a season as a true freshman, transfers to Georgia. He's sitting behind Carson Beck now. And Georgia's lawyers, they've got a ton of them there in their athletic department and in the alumni group. They're helping him sue the University of Florida for funds that he missed out on by not committing to Miami. So this is not the first time we've seen something quite like this. It's the first time we've seen an active starting quarterback sit out mid-season. Very wild. Matthew Sluka, I hope I'm not messing up his name. He was a transfer from Cross to UNLV. He was promised $100,000 by UNLV to enter the transfer portal and go to Vegas. The report from Pete Nakos is that he's only received 3,000 of that 100,000. Therefore, he's sitting out. He's redshirting the rest of the year. That was one big hit. That came out yesterday. This morning, we have their running back, Michael Allen. He had transferred from NC State over the winter. He's now deciding to redshirt. What he says, what we've heard so far, is that it doesn't have anything to do with NIL. I don't know how much sense that makes, but we'll find out more in the coming days. But this is not exactly the first time we've seen this. Maybe it's the first time we've seen it quite like this, but it's not going to be the last time. It's a terrible situation. You hate to see guys sit out like this, especially with a 3-0 UNLV. They've got 2 Power 5 wins under their belt now with Kansas and Houston. They're in position to get that G5 playoff spot. And as much as a lot of people want to rag on these guys and say, come on, man, be a team player. What are you doing? Is it all about the money or was it about the football? I don't know about you, John, but I don't think I'd keep going to work if they stopped paying me.
Yeah, I don't think I would either. And I think this is just kind of the issues that we see with NIL. We see it happening, and we've seen it happen here with UNLV. But you got to put your money where your mouth is. And if you want to play big, you got to pay to play. And that's what I think some of these smaller-ish schools are starting to realize. You got to pay to play if you want the athletes. And then if you got to put your money where your mouth is, you better be forking over the money once push comes to shove, because if not, you're going to have a lot of backlash and you have national scandals like we have now. So it's really a double-edged sword no matter how you look at it. But that begs the question, does NIL and has NIL infected college sports and essentially college football? And it's an age-old question. It's really, there's no way to win the argument because you got people that say keep money out of college sports, and you got other people saying these guys are really sacrificing a lot of their, academic careers and things of that nature. And it's bringing in so much money. So how can you not pay these athletes? I guess, do you see some kind of, mitigation happening with NIL and, caps that, you can pay athletes, things of that nature? Or how can it be monitored now? Because it seems like they've opened the floodgates on this and there's really no caps involved.
So really, I don't know if I want to see it go this way, and I don't know that it will. But I think the only way out of scandals or issues like this would be collective bargaining. Again, I don't know if that's the way I want to go. I don't know if I want to see these players become employees, but what that would look like to folks who haven't heard or been a part of those conversations would be that players become employees, and conferences would go ahead and set quotas for positions and starters, and what that pays. What that would mean is if you're being recruited by Ohio State and you're being recruited by Indiana at the same time to be a starting quarterback, the Big Ten has already set a price of what that would pay. So if you're the starter at Indiana, you're getting $1 million in NIL. It'd be the same at Ohio State. It's $1 million. It would be aimed to make this fair, to make NIL level the playing field, which unfortunately that was the idea, was that NIL was going to level the playing field. We're obviously not seeing that. When you have Shedeur Sanders, his NIL valuation is about 5.1 million, and UNLV's quarterback is getting screwed out of $100,000. I don't see a level playing field here. So the collective bargaining might be the way to go if you want to see players get the money that they're promised. I think that could lead to other issues. Again, I really don't know that I want to see players become employees. I liked the original pitch that we got for NIL a few years ago, which was just that instead of players getting paid by the schools, if you're Bryce Young, the quarterback at Alabama, Dr. Pepper wants to pay you a few million to be in the Dr. Pepper commercials, go for it. Go ahead. It's no longer illegal. That was a better model. Unfortunately, that was never going to happen. It was kind of a lie. Really what I want to see, and at the end of the day, this is what I tell people that I get into disputes with about this NIL stuff, because you got a lot of folks throwing their hands up and going, the game isn't the same anymore. What's the difference between this and professional football? Here's the thing. Think about it as a Michigander. At the end of the year, when Central Michigan is playing Western Michigan, they could both be winless. Do you really think it matters? Do you really think it matters that Shador Sanders has a bust down rollie on his wrist when Central Michigan and Western Michigan are duking it out? Do you really think when Kansas and Kansas State are battling it out in November, do you really think it matters that Cam Ward drives a Lamborghini? Do you think that matters? I don't think it matters one bit. So that's what I'd like to tell people, is to just focus on the game. Let the money do what it does. Let the players get paid. And just kind of, to me, it's an interesting story what's going on at UNLV. I hope it kind of just gets swept under the rug, because guess what? We've got games going on. We've got Army beating Temple right now as we speak. That's a lot more interesting to me than misappropriated or unpaid funds to players.
Yeah, it just becomes, you get to the point where you're lost in the weeds. And to be honest with you, Sam, I think they should throw you in the war room at the NCAA headquarters and just have a meeting of the minds, because I think you got some good ideas and maybe you could figure some tough problems out that nobody's really figured out yet.
To be honest, I keep an eye on the NCAA and their job openings, because if I could find a position there where I could advocate for players, I would 100% quit everything. I'd move to Indianapolis to work at headquarters there. Unfortunately, the NCAA, they appear to be in the business of screwing student athletes instead of vouching for them and lobbying for their best interests. So we'll see. I think this whole thing's going to kind of, well, this is a whole different conversation, but everybody's heard the rumblings about possibly the Big Ten and the SEC absorbing all of the better Power Four teams and stepping away from the NCAA. That might be a real thing we're talking about down the road. Hopefully not for 5 to 10 years, but at the way this is going, it kind of looks like Greg Sankey is kind of going to be the hero for these players, and he's going to be the one that vouches for them, and Tony Petitti right behind him. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. And this conversation is not done. NIL isn't going anywhere, and it leaves us with a good conversation piece to give the people. And people are thinking about it. People are talking about it. But real quick, before we let you go, let's talk about Week 5 college football betting prospects. What are we looking at? What games are we looking at? And what are our strategies going into Week 5?
We got a couple different strategies here I want to talk to you about. First of all, if you do not bet on sports, do not start. Don't do it. But do yourself a favor. Go download one of these sportsbook apps and just take a look around. If you start to see these numbers, you can start to understand the previews for these games a lot better. Just instead of looking at, Penn State and Illinois. I know Penn State. They're a big name brand. Who's Illinois? Go ahead and look at the numbers. It's pretty interesting. That's where I'm going to start. Penn State is favored by 19 and a half points right now, hosting Illinois. This is my segment called Do Not Bet. Do not bet against Illinois in this game. If you got a short memory, you might not remember the last time that Illinois went to Happy Valley. They went to something like 6 overtimes, I believe, and they beat Penn State there. 19 and a half points is crazy to take Penn State. At the same time, I'm not going to tell you to take it for Illinois. We don't really know what Illinois is right now. They look up. They're 4-0. They beat Kansas. Is Kansas Penn State? I don't think so. They're really not. But that's number one. Stay away from that line. Do not take minus 19 and a half. The second and the final do not bet is Notre Dame minus 7 hosting Louisville. If you remember last year, Notre Dame had went to Louisville. I believe they're about 9.5, 10-point favorite, and they lost. They got it handed to them. Notre Dame is struggling right now. I'm not just talking about the NIU loss. That's in the past. That's fine. Riley Leonard, my bad, having a lot of trouble throwing the ball around right now. And don't be mistaken. I'm not all of a sudden flipping my opinion that passing is everything. It's not, but it's a big part of their offense. I would stay away from Notre Dame -7. Again, not saying to take Louisville. The Louisville's a good team. Do not bet. Whatever you do, do not parlay those two together. You will lose. The next segment I've got here is straight betting. I know, John, you're not going to love this. I absolutely love Ohio State -23.5 at MSU this week. And I think Ohio State is really going to test MSU in their secondary, especially. Ohio State wants to move the ball around. Emeka Egbuka's only got one touchdown this year. I think they want to change that. I think they want to come into Big Ten play, flinging that ball around and scoring. I think they're going to come in and try to hang 60 on MSU. And I'm not saying MSU is going to let them because MSU is bad. I'm saying who stopped Ohio State so far. They look really good. I would take that straight. I would also take Kansas State -4.5 straight, hosting Oklahoma State. That line opened up at 5.5. Oklahoma State just lost last week to Utah. Utah's a good team. They played without Cam Rising. Completely outside of that, I really trust Avery Johnson. I really trust what Kansas State has going on. And I think Kansas State's looking to bounce back big after that loss against BYU. Hulk smash -4.5 Kansas State. My next straight bet that I would take is Michigan -9.5 hosting Minnesota. I touched on this earlier. Minnesota's not a bad team. I don't think there's any bad teams in the Big Ten. Like I said in the preview, that Minnesota's, I think they're like the fourth best defensive team when it comes to points per game, only giving up 12.6. I think Michigan, for once, is going to try to air it out against Minnesota. I think they're going to try to get up early, and I think they're going to try to find out how well Alex Orji can pass this ball, because it's kind of now or never. Next week, Michigan goes to Washington, and we're going to have to be a little more well-rounded to win that game. Washington's a real team. They've got a real quarterback there, and we can't. I don't think we can just go in there one-dimensional and only throw for 32. Like I said, we beat USC doing that. It wasn't Ohio State, Washington.
I don't know what happened. We just lost Sam. He was on a heater. Technical difficulties. You deal with that when you're talking about live shows. And I just have this to say. Bet with your head, not with your heart. Okay. And I was going to ask him, and maybe we can get him to rejoin. I was going to ask him, what is the benefit of taking straight bets compared to having 2 or 3 really solid straight bets and parlaying them? Maybe a little less money. Okay. Because I know Sam likes to throw, and we just got him back here. Let's see if we can bring him back in. Sam, I know we lost you for a second. Let me ask you real quick. And you were on a heater. I just told the people. You're on a heater. What is the benefit of taking some straight bets compared to, maybe combining some of those straight bets and saying, okay, well, these are really good bets, but I want to maybe put them together, or maybe I keep them separate? What is the rationale? What is the reasoning behind keeping straight bets as straight bets and not getting them mixed in with parlays?
So this is a system that's actually made me a good amount of money in the last few years. To be completely transparent, I do not bet big on anything other than college football. When I say I don't bet big, I mean if the fellas come over for the UFC fights, and
unfortunately, we're just not going to get the answer. That's just how it is sometimes. You got to deal with it, and you got to roll with it. Okay. Yeah, that is what it is. What it is, people. And I got a comment here from Mama Bink. I got to put it on the screen. She said, "My takeaway: if you do not bet on sports, don't start." And that's probably the best advice that I've ever heard. Okay. For those of people like me and people like everybody that I know are any way similar to me, then they've already got the bug. They've already got the degeneracy is deeply ingrained in their bones and their skin and their veins. So there's no getting out. Limiting the betting, I think, is a smart move. But once you got the bug, it's almost like kind of like a nicotine addiction. It's really tough to kick it. And when you stop smoking cigs or vaping, you go to the Zins. So it's just one of those things. But Sam, what are your final words, man? I don't want to lose you again. It breaks my heart to see you get on a heater and then to lose you. So what would you leave the people with?
Yeah, sorry, I'm gonna blame Verizon's cell signal for getting booted here. Hopefully, I can get the point in real quick. Where I was going with that is the reason why I like to take bets straight if it's a spread, whereas on a parlay, I like to tease them. So I'll break one down for you here in just a second if I can stay connected. I don't want to get screwed over by a bad call, by a bad officiating call, by a bad call from a coach when they went for it on fourth down, when they could have just kicked the field goal. So, for example, say the spread is 9, the team's down by a touchdown or whatever, and they could just kick a field goal and cover your spread, but they don't. They go for it on fourth down. They don't convert, and now you lose the game just barely. You just barely lose that bet because instead of taking the points, with 10 minutes left to go in the game, instead of covering the spread with 10 minutes left to go, they tried to be heroes and they tried to win that. So I've made good money by avoiding Vegas's line, because what Vegas says when they come out with that line, for example, I like this game. UCF is hosting Colorado. They've got it at a 14-point spread. First of all, I would never take a spread that's not a half number. I would always tease that. That's a good example. So, say UCF is winning by 2 touchdowns at the end of the game. Colorado's driving, and Colorado should be trying to score a touchdown. There's only a minute left. They should try to score a touchdown because they want to stay in this game, but instead they kick a field goal. Now UCF's only winning by 11. You lost your bet for nothing because Colorado was never going to win that game. They just cut the lead from 14 to 11. I hate that. I've seen people lose good money that way. So this is my tease of the week. I'm putting 4 plays together, and I'm teasing spreads. This way we avoid getting screwed by bad officiating, a bad no call, a bad pass interference call, or just a bad coaching call when they kicked it when they should have went for it, or they went for it and didn't get it when they could have got 3. Here we go. UCF, they're favored by 14 hosting Colorado. I'm teasing them down to 6.5. UCF to win by a touchdown. Shedeur Sanders, considered one of the best quarterbacks in the game. Travis Hunter, unanimous best player in the game. It's just not been enough. It's not been enough for them to win football games. The pieces around them are not putting it together, and I actually don't really love the coaching in game there. I think KJ Jefferson, I think the world of him. I think he's a phenomenal passer, and I think UCF is going to lay into them. But to be safe, I'm taking it down from 14 to 6.5. I'm putting that together with Ohio State. Now, I told you to take them straight, and I still will take them straight, but for the sake of a parlay, I do not take them straight, or I do not take Vegas's line in a parlay. I've got to make it my own. So I'm taking Ohio State down from 23.5 to a very safe minus 13.5. There's no reason why Ohio State shouldn't win this game by 2 touchdowns, even if it's scoring a garbage time touchdown. That to me seems like a lock. I would bet the mortgage straight on Ohio State minus 13.5. So why not put it in a parlay? I like that with Michigan minus 6.5. This is the most perfect example of my strategy when it comes to teasing. They're favored by 9.5. Let's completely negate the possibility of getting screwed by a field goal either way. Let's get it down to 6.5. And then to top it all off, I've got Kansas State minus 4.5 hosting Oklahoma. It sounds inconsistent because I'm not teasing that. The line opened up at 5.5. So if Vegas is going to give you 4.5, they're teasing and giving you free money. Take those four together. UCF -6.5, Ohio State -13.5, Michigan -6.5, KSU -4.5. You get 406 plus 406. Whatever your betting bankroll is for this week, you got a few bucks set aside for the President's Cup. You got a few bucks set aside for baseball, a few bucks for NFL. Forget it. Put it all together and throw it on this four-legger. Let's turn $100 into $500 in one shot, one afternoon.
You heard it here first, folks. This guy's done his homework. He's had his nose in the books. Okay, he's cracked the code with Vegas. So basically, it can be done. It can be done where you can have straight bets and you can also have parlays. You just got to find your own spreads if you're going to parlay them. You're saying with the straight bets, are you taking Vegas's spread with the straight bets?
So the way I would do this, if I had, let's say I had 400 in the account, I'd put 100 on Ohio State -23.5. I'd put 100 on KSU -4.5. I'd put 100 on Michigan -9.5. And then I'd take my last 100 and I'd put it on that four-legger. Spread it out.
I like it. Sam, you got any final words before we let you go, buddy?
Oof, man. It's a dangerous thing to ask me. I might go for another 36 minutes, John.
Hey, that's a risk I was willing to take.
I wouldn't let this weekend get away from you. It's going to be a great one. The Notre Dame-Louisville game, it's going to be fireworks. That's Saturday night at 7:30. And one game we didn't touch on because that game deserves probably a 3-hour podcast all by itself. Georgia and Alabama. Got to watch that. That should be, if you do one thing this weekend, it's got to be to watch Georgia, Alabama. Notice I didn't preview that. I didn't touch on it when it comes to betting. I'm not betting a dime on that game. I'm just going to enjoy it for what it is. It's going to be absolute cinema.
Can't wait. Sam Vitale, ladies and gentlemen, college football senior analyst for the GSN Sports Network. Have a great night, Sam.
Hey, thanks, John.
Thanks, buddy. Well, you heard it here first, folks. Sam Vitale, senior college football analyst for the GSN Sports Network. Great work, exemplary work, and that's why we have him on our team, because he does a hell of a job. And it's so good to have him back in the booth talking on the podcast, the GSN Sports Network podcast of all of them, on episode 100. I mean, does it get any better than this? I don't think so. So you'll be catching Sam with Cody and Connor and everybody on the Gin College podcast very soon. But we got to bring in a very special guest, newcomer to the Gin Sports Network. So happy to have this guy a part of our community. Chris Koon, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome him. And Chris, how you doing, buddy, man? I never even talked to you before. Never seen you face to face.
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I talked to you a lot in the Discord. How's everything going, man?
It's going awesome, man. Padres are killing it. Kind of probably lost the division this time, but you never know what could happen. So definitely have a wild card, clinch the playoffs. So we're just excited.
Yeah. So I just want to say you are a very welcomed breath of fresh air for the GSN Sports Network, because you are our MLB insider for professional baseball, which we haven't really had that aspect of the podcast or anything GSN related yet. And your passion for the game, I can see it through your posts in the Discord, everything, your mentality towards the game of baseball, and the Padres. It's just Padres this, Padres that, and I love it. So tell me where your fandom comes from when it comes to the Padres, and where are your roots when it comes to being a fan of the game of baseball? Where does that stem from?
Honestly, I've been into baseball for like the past couple of seasons. I didn't know I would love the game so much. I've always been a huge football, basketball fan, and I moved to San Diego a few seasons ago, and I remember the Padres were playing really well. They were in the NLCS. They just beat the Dodgers, and I remember people being really excited about it. And then I went to a few games the next year, and they were awful. I mean, they were supposed to win the World Series that year. They put a bunch of money into the team. They weren't any good, but I remember Tatis stealing third base, or I'm sorry, stealing home, and that was like a turning point for me, where I was super jazzed to watch that happen. And I think I ended up going to like 9 or 10 games that year and just fell in love with Petco Park. Learned so much about baseball. It's pretty much, I mean, I watch baseball every single day at this point. So became a real passion of mine. And then this year, we've been to like 35 games. Definitely going to be going to all the playoff games. And we just became huge fans of the Padres. And I mean, I grew up in Michigan and we always liked the Tigers. I still root for the Tigers, but I never was a baseball fan as a kid. So it took me to be able to go to a lot of games to really fall in love with the sport. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome, man. So tell me about the Padres. Are they serious World Series contenders? You have some question marks with winning the division and whatnot. What is it going to take for them to make a deep run going into the fall?
Well, I think for the Padres, unlike any other team, I think we kind of know what the Dodgers are capable of, and they are a very good team, especially when they're hot. The Phillies, we know what they're capable of. But I think with the Padres, and the reason that they can make the World Series is we haven't really seen an entire Padres team healthy yet. And I think it's on its way. And this is the most healthy we've been all season. And maybe on purpose, maybe not. But it seems like as guys got hurt, they very strategically brought them back, meaning like 6 weeks before the playoffs, we're going to go ahead and bring Joe Musgrove back. 4 weeks before the playoffs, we're going to bring Tatis and Yu Darvish back. And all of a sudden, we have all these pitchers that could really throw. And the Padres just kind of hung in that wild card spot. And then after those guys came back, it was kind of game over. And we saw some crazy games. The year Jackson Merrill has had, insane. 21-year-old kid. He turned 21 this year. And that kid is just nuts. I mean, he has like 6 game tying or go ahead home runs after the 8th inning this year alone. So he's like one of those guys that when the pressure's on, he really steps up, and you never know what you're going to get. So.
Yeah, just dealing with injuries is one thing. And then if you can strategically bring those players back into the fold, maybe it's one by one, maybe it's as they get healthy, maybe it's as they feel comfortable to get back on the field. That's what you got to do. As long as you're strategic from a head office standpoint, which it seems like the Padres have been, then they should be able to make a deep run. Obviously, got to keep those guys healthy, I'd say, from here on out. But but that's going to be important. So you got to look at it from all angles, right? Tell me about Shohei Ohtani. I mean, is this guy even human? Because all the records he's breaking, it's just like, is this guy? What planet is this guy from?
I mean, he's definitely I think he's the greatest baseball player of all time, and I think a lot of people agree with me. 50-50 is just nuts, and I think, he's really getting close to something else to watch for. Is he almost has 100 extra base hits this year, which is very few guys have done that. And if he was pitching on top of this, it would just be nuts. I mean, he's also like a Cy Young pitcher, so
yeah.
And there's nothing you could really do when you play the Dodgers because, you could walk him, but then you have Mookie Betts on deck, and then Shohei has stolen so many bases this year, and I think it was 33. Don't quote me on the number. He's stolen 33 straight bases without being caught out. So if you walk the guy, you're basically putting a guy right in scoring position. So it's right. And he's leading him off, so it's very hard to deal with for a pitcher coming in, trying to find their groove, and the first guy they have to face is Ohtani. And the guy is just nuts. So when the Dodgers want to be hot, they are dangerous.
Yeah, you talk about all the weapons the Dodgers already had before bringing Ohtani on, and now he just seems like he's the Swiss Army knife of baseball. And,
Absolutely.
Demanding max contracts, and now we see why he's doing that. And, you got the scandals. You got it could have been a Pete Rose situation real easy. He obviously dodged that and got out of that. Dodged it. No pun intended there. But it's really amazing to watch the guy play, and his stoicism when he plays is unmatched. It's just so smug, and it's just like I belong out here. I found my calling. I'm out here. I'm just doing my job.
Yeah. He holds the bat so funny, I always think, but he looks so calm. And when he does hit the ball, it's such a perfect swing. The guy is just The Padres are in a series against them right now, and every time he steps up to the plate, I get nervous. And I'm thinking about who's going to be pitching when Ohtani, how many batters away from Ohtani do we have? And
Right.
I think, every team has to think that. And every team has to figure out, okay, we need to put this pitcher in because Ohtani's 2 batters away, so
Yeah.
changes the entire game when you have to think about that from a defensive standpoint.
Right. You're changing your strategy entirely just to gear it around one player. It seems kind of crazy, but that's the reality of playing the Dodgers and playing Shohei Ohtani, because that's the baseball player that he is, and he's really embodied that. He's such a young guy. He's got so much promise left in the league, and so much time left to really develop that. And the sky is really the limit for this guy, and I don't know if he has any limits
No.
to be reached. So talk to me about the Rookie of the Year, National League, Skeens versus Merrill. What are we looking at here? Who has the edge and why?
Right now, Skeens is the favorite. I mean, they're both. I just want to say that the MLB should definitely have 2 Rookie of the Years, because this has been a problem in the past too. They should definitely have a pitcher Rookie of the Year and a fielder Rookie of the Year. They're both very deserving of it. Paul Skeens right now is 11-3. He has like a 1.9 ERA. But Jackson Merrill, see, this is why it's hard, is Jackson Merrill has to play every day. And through Jackson Merrill playing every day, he's hanging out there with the big dogs, and he's an amazing fielder. He made some great plays last night that kept us in the game. If it wasn't for him, some diving catches, and he plays center field, which is one of the toughest positions to play in the major leagues. You have so much ground to cover, and he does a very good job of it. And I think he's a little underlooked on that aspect. But I think Skeens will win. I've heard before that it seems like East Coast teams will always win Rookie of the Year. I don't know if this is true, but I've heard it's because the games are so late, people kind of miss out on the magic that the guys on the West Coast are playing with. So I don't know if there's any truth to that, but I hope Merrill wins it because we love the guy. But either way, happy to have him, and yeah, he's just insane right now.
Do you think Livy Dunn has anything to do with this decision, or the favorite?
I think any sport, you can look at football and like Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce not playing well, but no one's going to say anything about that. And I definitely think that it has something to do with it. I mean, the league's always going to buy into what sells,
That's right. That's exactly right.
I mean, it's for money at the end of the day, but who knows? I mean, they would never say that,
No, they'd never come out and say that. They would never do that. So let's talk about the tight race for the wild card. We got the Diamondbacks, we got the New York Mets, and we got the Atlanta Braves. Who do you think has the best chance of making it? Because obviously we're talking about that right now. We're talking about that with the Detroit Tigers right now in the AL. So what are we looking at as far as those teams go?
That has been so crazy because to be honest with you, I would be really surprised if the Braves got in there, because the Braves have been kind of right there the entire time, but they haven't had like a ton of upward trajectory. Whereas like the Mets, I really think are going to secure the second spot, just because the Mets started playing so well towards the end of August and then into September, and they're still playing well. And then the Diamondbacks have a little bit fallen off, but I know what the Diamondbacks are capable of. And Corbin Carroll, when he's on, that team is so good. So that's actually the team I'm the most afraid of as a Padres fan, the Diamondbacks. The Padres are 8-4 against the Dodgers. They're only 5-5 against the Diamondbacks, and they, for some reason, they always have our number. So I think that the Diamondbacks will make another run. Like last year, they made a run, made it all the way to the World Series as a wild card. So
that's right.
I wouldn't count them out. I think if I had to pick the 2 teams that are going to be second and third, I think I'd go Mets, Diamondbacks. But who knows? It's baseball. Who's going to get hot right here at the end? So.
Yeah, really, it's who gets hot leading up and getting into October. If you can get into October and make it into the wild card or make it in however you can, then it's like a completely brand new season. It's like who has the most longevity, who can go in a 7-game series and win 4 games. They have to go and do all the trials and tribulations, but you have to treat it completely differently. I compare it to hockey when you talk about postseason hockey. And even NBA basketball. You can get a little bit in the weeds and talk about NBA basketball winning a 7-game series. And that's something that you don't have in football. Obviously, it's win or go home. When you talk about the NFL, you talk about now the 12-team format of college football. But it's who's going to get hot in October. And it's really tough to tell right now. You see teams kind of scraping by and getting in and getting past that threshold of making it, barely making it. But who's going to get hot? And it's really too tough to tell. I think it's too soon to tell right now.
Yeah, it definitely is. And we're in for a good show, especially in the NL. I mostly watch NL baseball, but they are, that's a good one. Every single day is worth watching. So.
Yeah, it really is. All right, let's talk real quick before I let you go. Let's talk about the Detroit Tigers. Is it a Cinderella story? You talked to me a month ago, 2 months ago. I'm like, okay, it's just another year for the Detroit Tigers. Maybe they have a solid team, but I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. Now they're in the playoff conversation. How did that happen?
Man, it is a Cinderella story. It's got to be, because I feel like at the All-Star break, not like they gave up, but I feel like the Detroit Tigers started thinking about the future based off of their moves. And it kind of seemed like, okay, we have a good young core. Let's keep that moving. Let's try to build around that. But somehow these guys, I mean, they've always been great at pitching, but they started swinging the bat too. And
Yeah.
Tigers are dangerous. I think they're the best team in baseball in September, just in the major leagues altogether.
Really?
They absolutely are dangerous. Sky's the limit for them. Realistically, I think maybe they win a series, and I think that's great because no one expected them to do that. But I hope the best for them, and I do think the sky's the limit. And these young guys, they definitely know how to play. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, I'd love to see him do good, man. I've been even since the Curtis Granderson, Maglio Ordonez days, and talking about some crazy games, crazy finishes. That's when I was a big Tigers fan, and they kind of fell off for me. And I would say my love for baseball and the MLB itself has kind of dwindled since then, which we're talking, better half 20 years ago. So it's a breath of fresh air to see him back in the conversation, to see a Detroit team back in the fold. Especially after seeing what happened to the Detroit Red Wings, with the Philly Flyers and the Caps situation last season. But you got preseason hockey coming too, so there's a lot that's in play right now. But it's great to see a Detroit team get back in the fold and really have a chance to make a run.
Man, it's a great time of year. Like you said, hockey's coming up, NBA's coming up. We have baseball coming to a close, and then obviously the NFL and college football is going on. It's the best. So
yeah. So we have. I don't know if you know this, Chris. I've talked about this. You're new, so I don't know if you've heard this before. But there's multiple sports eclipses that happen throughout the year. They're not that common. Kind of like a solar eclipse, or however you want to look at eclipses. They're not that common, but when they happen, it's really a sight to be seen. I think we got one coming up here soon with all the sports kind of converging. It's the fall eclipse for sports. So it's going to be a hell of a ride, man.
I haven't heard that, but you're totally right. That's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. I got to trademark that, I think. Chris, any final words before we let you go tonight?
Are you allowed to swear on here or no?
Of course.
Oh, okay. Let's fucking go, San Diego.
Oh, baby. You heard it here first. San Diego Padres fan, one of the biggest that I know, for sure. Right here, Chris Koon. I mean, if they make a run, it's all because of you, brother. Thanks again, Chris. Chris Koon, ladies and gentlemen, our MLB insider for the Gin Sports Network. Such a great opportunity to have him be a part of this community. And like I said earlier, it's a breath of fresh air to have MLB in the fold, especially for the GSN podcast. And getting into October, the Christmas season of baseball. We're getting into that. We're approaching that. October is on its way. We're knocking on October. So it's just a hell of a time. Just a hell of a time. I'm going to bring back a familiar face from you see him, you know him from the DCP, Double Coverage NFL podcast. We're going to talk some NFL here on the GSN podcast tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Tony Minarik. Tony, how you doing, buddy?
Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Man. What's going on, man? What's happening?
Not much. I'm actually just watching some Thursday Night Football right now, relaxing, enjoying some brews, having a good old Thursday.
I haven't watched 1 minute of that game. Can you fill me in?
Um, for the Giants, the perfect word to say for the Giants right now is kicker. It's a kick fest. 4 field goals. Right now it's 12-14. Dallas is looking better. CD's being CD. They obviously, the game plan coming into this game was feed CD, and they have definitely done that. And Giants have moved the ball. Daniel Jones has looked, I think, very good for a lot of the Daniel Jones hate going on. He's looked a lot better than he has previous years. And they're moving the ball, but they can't finish in the red zone. I've seen probably 3 drives die out at the 5-yard line. They had to kick 3 field goals. So definitely looking like Giants are relying on the kicker more than they should, but it's a 2-point game. That 1 field goal will win it for you. So,
Yep. Looks like it's going to be one of those games, goes down to the wire, a kick will win it or lose it for you. We have a comment here that I got to catch up on. I got to apologize to my boy Issa about this because I don't know if he's still with us or not. But we were on different topics at the time. He posed the question, is Malik Neighbors the GOAT? And I was thinking about that the entire time since I saw the comment. But I figured I'd ask you, Tony, is Malik Neighbors the GOAT or is he just another player in the NFL?
I mean, I don't know if he can go quite GOAT yet. He's had 3 career games. Now this is going to be his 4th playing tonight. He's played 3.5 career games. I wouldn't quite say the GOAT, but what I think he definitely is what Puka Nacua was last year. Just someone that they expected to be good, but not quite this good. I mean, he's looked amazing out there. I mean, he's getting like 30, in his first 3 games, he got like 36 targets with like 28 or 29 receptions or something like that, which is ridiculous. He's scoring touchdowns, he's getting the catches, not a lot of drops, just shockingly, the Giants offense just in general has looked very good this year. I wouldn't quite put him in the GOAT conversation, but by far, I think he's looking like the offensive rookie of the year this year. By far right now. I mean, everybody had high hopes for Marvin Harrison, which game 1 he looked terrible, but since then Marvin Harrison's looked very good. But Malik has just made Marvin Harrison almost irrelevant so far, which is kind of crazy. If you would have said that 4 weeks ago, right before the season started, and said, "Oh, Malik Neighbors is gonna make Marvin Harrison look like a bum out there," everybody would have told me anybody that you're full of shit. And he has looked amazing. He is, like I said, by far right now, I think the best offensive rookie by a landslide. And if he just has a decent rest of the year, I think he still wins it unless Marvin Harrison goes nuclear in the second, or I shouldn't say second half. We're only 3 games in the next 80% of the year. But I wouldn't quite say GOAT. I mean, Issa, I think, is getting a little excited. He probably has him on his fantasy team, so he's getting all bonered up about it. I mean, he's definitely very good, but I wouldn't quite say GOAT yet. You gotta give him a couple more games.
Well, I got to give myself a quick pat on the back for drafting him on my fantasy team. And I do got to apologize to you, T, because maybe let's put it out there for the people, because I think that there's a controversy here. And I can tell it in the tone of your text messages.
Yeah, I was pissed.
Over the weekend.
Still not happy about it.
That's kind of shitty, he says. That's kind of shitty. Okay, let me just paint a picture for you. So he's like, hey, you want Baker Mayfield? I'll take Kenneth Walker III. Okay? Tony said that to me. I'm thinking about it, scratching my head and, thinking about it, thinking about it a little bit more.
Too.
You gave me a couple days.
About it.
You gave me a couple days. I guess if I could blame you at all, it would be the fact that you didn't make me shit or get off the pot. Because if you did, then I would have had an opportunity to, a couple days before game day. And, I don't know if you know this or not, but I was on the golf course and I had some business to attend to.
I was at a wedding in Chicago.
Okay, yeah, so you have things going on too. Yeah, you were traveling, you're on the road, you're on the railways.
Yeah,
right?
Man, I was freaking traveling like the old school pilgrims.
Yeah, so I guess there's blame on both sides, but hindsight's 2020. I'm so happy that I left Sam Darnold, and that was just a bloodbath in our matchup that we had.
And
I guess I got to apologize too.
More for me.
Well, I got to apologize for kicking your ass so bad in fantasy.
Yeah,
That's just
that
kind
was
of
bad.
put up
Well,
160, 170 points. That's unheard of.
hate to break it to you, you're not the first one this year. It's been very, very tough on the fantasy side of things.
Yeah, well, that's the first draft pick curse, I think, and you've had that
Yeah,
2 years in a row
well,
now on the Pro Capper. 2 years in a row, he's went first, and both were
well,
random occurrences. And this week it
last
was a
year
horse race this year.
it kind of worked out. Like I had a pretty good team. This year I still like my team even without McCaffrey because I got Jordan Mason, so that kind of helped me a little bit. And he's not been bad. Just when one guy's on and other guy's off, it's just peaks and valleys all throughout the team. I mean, I'm not doing terrible. I'm averaging like 115 or 112 a week, but I mean, I'm getting average one. Week one, your cousin put up 140 on me. You put up 170. I think week two, someone put up like 125, which isn't amazing, but I'm just getting railroaded from everywhere. Not a great start of the season.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So we're at this point in the season now, which it is what it is. What is this, week 4?
This is Thursday night's the start of week 4.
Yep, so we're in week 4. I guess
One game or 3/4 of a game in week 4.
how do you kind of reconstruct things if you're going to at all? If you're in a position where maybe you're in that peaks and valleys situation, how do you adjust and how do you rise above that and the uncertainty of it and make decisions? Where do you make those decisions? Do you cut players? Do you get somebody off waivers? Do you try to get some trades going amongst players and managers in the field? What do you do? What do you do to rebuild or
Well,
reevaluate?
Kenneth would have been a nice little start to things, but obviously that didn't work out. But on that line, waivers I think is your I should I want to say it's your I don't want to say it's your best friend because waivers are obviously you got to be picking and choosing who you want. But waivers are a scot-free type of trading. There's no I don't have to really give anybody up, and if you are dropping players, they're not someone that you're like I'm so set on that I need on my team. You're trying to find some diamonds in the rough. But a lot of time with waivers are your definitely trying to find people that are going to be good later on. Like big names last couple weeks were like Bucky Irving, Braylon Allen. Like they're great players, but they're behind Brees Hall and Rashad White. And now you're hoping, does Rashad White go down with injury? Does Brees Hall go down with injury? When you pick up them guys, you are hoping so, but it looks like actually like Bucky Irving's starting to carve a starting rotation or getting a lot of carries out of the Buccaneers offense. So but that's still a waiting game. It's still gonna be split carries for a while unless an injury happens. That's what waivers you're kind of a waiting game. And when you start off really crappy in fantasy, you don't really can play the waiting game unless you're 2-1, 3-0, then you can play a waiting game. But when you're 1-2, 2-2 is still iffy, and definitely 0-3 or 2-1, and then 0-3, you're not looking so hot. So now you got to go. I've been hitting the group chats and stuff, trying to find some trades, sending some offers out there, and I think it's time to just I mean, still, I don't hate my team, but it's a turnover. You just need fresh faces in there. Perfect example is Sam Darnold in the real life. Well, I mean, he sucked at the Jets, sucked at Carolina. You get him in the Vikings, get him a fresh new uniform, get him fresh new feel and everything, and look at him now. He's right now. He's probably the leader of the MVP voting. So I need fresh faces on the team.
Yeah, I gotta say, like I said, I don't want to pat myself on the back any more than I already have, but picking him up off waivers was arguably one of the best decisions I think I've made. And yeah, I'm looking at him. He took a couple hits, and it seems like he was questionable going into the week. Now he is not. I believe he is active and well. Though there is some verbiage to be written about him through those hits that he was taking. He's taking a little bit of a beating. Still got a hell of a win. But picking him up off waivers was kind of a good decision. I kind of had to. I was in scramble mode, and I needed to have that quarterback after losing Tua and after losing Jordan Love, which it seems like Jordan Love is going to be back in the fold for the Packers. this weekend against the Vikings. So that's going to be a little bit of a battle of the NFC North. I don't know how that's going to pan out, but get a hold of me after this, and I'll give you Kenneth Walker. Let's figure something out. I think we're good at the quarterback position. I don't know if you got any other skill players you want to get rid of that are taking up room on your bench.
I don't know if you've been checking the Discord. I have 9 players on the starting lineup and 5 on the bench. I believe all 16 are available.
Okay, well, we'll talk after this then. Talk to me about the Detroit Lions, obviously getting a big win over the Arizona Cardinals after losing to the Buccaneers. What does their outlook look like? Do they still have the biting of the kneecaps mentality that has been posed by their leader, Dan Campbell? And newest appearance, Guy, the newest spokesman for Applebee's, eating good in the neighborhood. Okay, 50-cent wings every single day. And don't show them your order.
Delicious wings too.
Don't show them your order. You're gonna give it away.
Yeah,
and they'll never see it coming.
Bill Belichick will steal that order.
Yeah, fuck yeah. Or Andy Reid. Andy Reid too.
Or Jim Harbaugh.
Shit, Jim Harbaugh's hungry over there.
I know. He's wishing he had some Connor Stallions last week.
Yeah, he did. He might be coming out of the woodwork here. You watch. But Detroit Lions, let's not get off topic here, T. I know it's easy to do. I do it too. Detroit Lions, what does their outlook look like? And they face the coveted Seattle Seahawks on Monday Night Football.
Kryptonite.
What does it look like for them?
I would say it looks. I think, man, every year was the last 3 years they've played them. Seahawks have just dropped points after points after points on them. And you would look at them years prior, you'd be like, oh, they don't have it. They don't have it. And all of a sudden, Seahawks would drop 45. And they're like, oh, the Lions got them this year. And then the Seahawks will beat them freaking in overtime, I think, what they did last year. So Seahawks, I feel like, are just, they have the Lions number. I don't know if that's going to, change or not. So I think it's going to be a good game. Detroit's wearing their all-black uniforms for the first time and the blue helmets. So I'm really excited to see those. I think they're going to look sick in the Monday Night Lights. And I mean, the Seahawks they're not a bad team by any means. They look good, and I just don't know. I think it's gonna be a shootout like it's been the last 3 years. But talking previous game, Cardinals, I think the greatest sign that's it's been shown for years and years and years had nothing to do with the play on the field was the fans. They showed out. I mean, there was probably a good 45% of the stadium was Lions fans on the road in Arizona, which is not a close stadium. So that shows that fans are still fully behind them. They had kind of a stinker last week, or now 2 weeks ago, against the Bucks. But I think they're still kind of knocking out some rust from the offseason. I think a little bit of the, hype train got to them a little bit, but I think they're starting to settle back into like who they are. Their defense looks a hell of a lot better than it did last year, especially in the secondary. Is it the best in the league? No. Is it the worst? Hell no, because it was bottom of the barrel last year. Basically, if you're playing the Lions, you're throwing for 350 to 400 yards. And this year, you're not going to have that. They have a damn good run defense. Shut down James Conner, who was on a tear till last week. So they're looking good there. If the defense keeps playing like they are, the offense doesn't need to do what they did last year. They don't need to put up 45 points. They don't need to be slinging it all over the field. They don't need Jahmyr Gibbs and Monty to have combined 300 yards a game. They don't need that. They don't need Jameson Williams to have 100 yards and Amon-Ra to have 2 touchdowns and 100 yards. They can just kind of win. They can win games 17-10. They can win games 10-7. They can win. I think they could win games 6-3 if they had to. I mean, I hope they score more than 6 points a game, but they don't need to score 25, 30 points if they want to win. And I think that's a very promising sign for later in the year when it comes down to like last year, the 49ers game. If they had a defense that could stop a couple passes, they didn't need to go for a couple fourth downs here and there. They could have just kicked field goals and easily pulled away. And I think that's a very promising sign for the rest of the year. if they can have a defense plays well and an offense that just plays above average.
Would you argue that that style of play is different or not so much compared to last season? And maybe even going further back, the season before that. Um, would you say that their model has changed, their angle of attack has changed, or do you think they're just kind of moving pieces around and utilizing certain parts of their offense that maybe they weren't before?
I think they still have the same mindset. Like, I think they still have the mentality like, we're underdogs, we need to perform. But I think what's different from last year was the defense could give up 25 to 35 points any given night. Like that's a possibility. So when you're an offensive on the offensive side of the ball, they felt like they need to score at least like probably 14 to 70 points in the first half just to feel comfortable going in the second half, going, if we only score a touchdown or something in the second half, we'll be all right. This year, it's different where it's like we don't need to score these outrageous numbers. We have a defense that's at least holding these teams to a lower value. I mean, our red hot Buccaneers team held them to what, 18, 19 points or something like that, which was a pretty low scoring game for the Buccaneers. And then, I mean, Arizona was on a tear offensively, scoring, I think, like 36 or 30. I'm not 36, 35 for week one. I think 28 or something like that, or even more week two. And then, Detroit held them to what, 10 week three. So that's showing the defense is definitely stepping up from what they were last year. And they're looking good this year. And if they can keep doing that, I think it takes a lot of weight off the shoulders of the offense. And with a more relaxed offense, I think they could be even more dangerous. It's just they might not need to be putting their foot all the way down on the gas pedal. They can kind of ease up a little bit and be more a little strategic with what they do offensively. They don't need to be slinging it everywhere like they did last year. Because last year was, hey, we're gonna throw a 80-yard bomb to Amon Ra. We're gonna do a hook and ladder, double reverse to Jameer and Monty, and then we're gonna get Jameson out here throwing slants and hoping he breaks one. Now you don't need that. If that happens, great, but you don't need it like you did last year. Because if the offense wasn't working, perfect example last year was the Baltimore game. Offense was not playing well. You got blown out, what, 30, 38 or 40-6. This year, I don't think that's going to really happen. It's going to be more low scoring games if the offense isn't scoring, like the Buccaneers game. And even the Cardinals game was kind of low scoring for Lions standards compared to last year being a 20-10 game. I feel like that game last year would have been a 42-35 or 42-38 type of game. And this year it's a 20-10 game. So the defense is stepping up, and offense just shows 80% or even 70% of what they were last year. I think they're going to be easy a playoff team, and I think they win the division. Even though the Vikings have looked amazing and they're starting 3-0, I think the Vikings are going to come down back to earth a little bit. I still think they're looking like a playoff team with all their talent, and their defense is playing well as well. So I still think they win the division. The Lions win the division if they just play, like I said, 70% of offense they did last year, and the defense continues to play like they're playing now.
Yeah, it's going to be a hell of a feat for the Lions to take down this Minnesota Vikings team, especially with how good they're looking, with how solid they're looking, and how well-rounded they're looking. But still,
they
a lot
got
of
the talent.
prospecting. They have the talent, but they can when the nose meets the grindstone, are they going to be able to stand the test? And they have so far, but there's still a lot of games left. So a lot of prospecting to do, a lot of looking forward that we can do. And we'll have to do a recap next week on the DCP, looking back at all these games and looking back at
Hopefully
how
looking
good
back at a
our
win.
anticipations were. What's that?
Said hopefully looking back at a win.
Yeah, for the Lions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely for the Lions.
Right.
Everybody
Yeah, and the
else
Seahawks are going to be a test. Like you said, they've always
No,
been a
they-
burr in the side of the Detroit Lions, at least
I
as
don't.
of late.
Unfortunately, I mean, I haven't seen the line of what it is Monday, but if I was a betting man, I'd probably take. It hurts me, but I'd probably take the Seahawks. They just seem to have the Lions number every year.
Do you want to know the spread?
What is it? Is it a close spread, or the Lions got to be favored?
They are. I guess if you had to guess without looking, what would you say it would be?
I'd probably say Lions 2.5, -2.5.
-3.5. Not far off.
See, I would 3.5. I would take plus 3.5 for the Seahawks.
Yeah, definitely. And that's
Field
one of
goal.
those things.
If
It's the coveted spread. It's right there. If you're -3.5, you're taking the points with the other team.
yeah,
If you're -2.5, you're probably going to take the favorited team because
yeah,
then you have
I was
that
just
field
gonna,
goal
yeah,
cushion.
I just agree. I was just gonna say if it was 2.5, 2.5 max, but if it was 2, 1.5, taking the Lions. But 3.5, I'll take them 3 points.
Yeah, I hear you. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about the President's Cup. I don't know if you tuned in or watched any of it today. First day of the President's Cup for golf. The international team versus the United States. United States massive favorites, and they take a 5-point lead, 5-0, win all of their matchups, and all five of their matches they won them all, and we just got to talk about how this U.S. team has really changed. Obviously, Sahith Theegala, he is taking off as being one of the more prominent golfers on the PGA Tour. Doesn't really have any, significant wins on his own. This is his first President's Cup appearance, playing alongside Colin Morikawa, which he was picking him up. He was helping him out, giving him pointers, telling him how to handle the pressure of a group-style event. And they played great golf. Winning one up against Minwoo Lee and Adam Scott, which Adam Scott was playing out of his mind too. It kept that one close. We're not talking about serious margins here. These are close matchups. 3 of the 5 happened in by only one hole, essentially. One up. 3 of the matchups were won by one up only. The others were 3 and 2 that means up 3 with 2 to play, and the final one was up 2 with 1 to play. So we're not talking about serious margins, but with the favoritism that has been given to this U.S. team, it speaks for itself when you talk about the numbers and you talk about the win to loss ratio, which is flawless, perfect for now. But we'll see how that pans out. You need 15.5 points to win, T. Different formats every day. They played 4-ball today, which I believe that means they take the best score of the 2 pairings, and you play your own ball. So you got different formats you play. But I guess, what's your outlook on the President's Cup? Have you watched any of it, or what are your takeaways?
I haven't seen much of it. What mainly I've seen it was Scotty and Tom Kim going at it with the putt offs.
Yeah.
With the long putts, freaking yelling at each other, which I loved the energy from both sides. Loved it. Go at each other. What does it matter? You're sitting there going head to head. I haven't, like I said, I haven't. That's pretty much the only thing I really seen from it. I did see early on. I didn't know. What you said USA was up 5-0. I think the last time I looked, it was 3-0. But yeah, I mean they've looked good. They're playing well. So I mean, honestly, I don't see them. I mean, obviously you can lose one here and a grouping here and there, but they've looked solid and they've played well with each other. So that's good to see if you're a USA fan, which obviously I am. Go USA.
Yeah, a lot of golf left to be played. We're going to get Sobo on here, hopefully Sunday. We're talking to Sobo. He's our big golf insider, analyst, sports bettor. He's the only guy that he can jump into a sports pool with a game of golf and betting and win a lot of money. And he does it with a lot of people. The buy-ins are big, but his ability to seek out talent and see who's going to play well before they even tee off the first hole, who's going to play well. It's really insightful. I'm trying to take after that a little bit. So we'll have to see what he has to say come Sunday, the final day of the President's Cup. Cool. Well, it's been an hour and 20 minutes. I had a great time, had a lot of great guests on here today. Tony, you got any final words, final thoughts with people going into the weekend?
Hey, well, if you want to talk anything about football, I think, I'm not saying a win. I don't think Michigan State is going to beat Ohio State by any means, but I think they're definitely going to cover the 24-point spread. I think they're better than people are giving them credit for. So I think what I would give people is, grab a 6-pack, crack open a couple beers, sit down, watch some football, and I think you would be greatly entertained over the next, what was today, Thursday? Over Saturday and Sunday at least. I don't know if there's much. I don't think there's any games tomorrow, is there? No games Friday?
I don't think so. There's games
I
right
don't
now.
think
I don't know
so.
if there's
Yeah.
games tomorrow.
I don't think
Taking
there's
the
any
day
games
off.
Friday. So I was gonna say, I can grab a 12-pack, split 6 and 6 for Saturday and Sunday, and I think you're gonna enjoy some good games. And like I said, I think State covers easy. I think they keep it. I think it's a less than a 2-touchdown game. I think the final score is less than 2 touchdowns.
Wow, really? Sam Vitale was saying smash 23.5 for Ohio
I
State.
think sounds like a Michigan fan.
Well, I think you're right. No, he is.
I think they're better than what people are giving them credit
But
for.
you think a Michigan fan's going to take Ohio State to beat anybody and want to? I think he's better with his head, not with his heart.
I think he's going to want Ohio State to beat everybody so bad because when they get to them, they're going to say, when we beat Ohio State, look how bad they beat everybody.
Yeah. Well, we'll
even
have to
though
see.
they're not, they shouldn't have beat a USC to start. That's a separate conversation. We're not going to get in that. Yeah, we don't need to get in that. That's
we got to get into that though, because that hasn't left my mind. Not to mention the Michigan State loss either.
Well, oh my God,
that was piss poor. T, you know it. Boston
piss
College.
Poor.
It's a tough environment, but you got to win. You can't throw a pick in the dying embers like that.
Not even that. Look, you're up. What was it? I can't remember what the halftime score was. Was it 13-7, 16-7, or something like that? You can't. The first 2 plays, fumble and then interception. You can't do that. You gave
too many
up
turnovers.
That's going to
be the tail. That's going to be the tail of this season. That
was
essentially the downfall of this team. Is the
first 5 minutes of the third quarter? You had a 2-score lead and you're down a score in the first 5 minutes. Yeah. You can't do that. And then they definitely played better end of the third and what? 14 minutes and 28 seconds of the fourth until they were moving the ball. I don't know why he threw that in the end zone. You don't need to throw that in the end zone. You just need a field goal. You just need a field goal.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's true.
I think that was a rookie mistake there. I mean,
it was.
He's basically still a freshman.
Yeah, he's got a lot of growing into his position to do.
And
I think he's gonna be fine. They're gonna be fine.
No,
he's got to grow into that position.
Yeah, he's gonna be fine. But on that move, you gotta remember. Well, one thing that is nice about the 12-team playoff now, that win doesn't eliminate you, or that loss does not eliminate you. Years prior, you lose that game, you're done. You're out.
Oh yeah,
see ya.
Definitely.
Like, don't even show up. Don't even show up the rest of the what? That was game 4. Don't even show up the rest of the 8 games. Last year or the years prior, now you can still fight for easily probably top 10 spot.
Yeah, it's going to change the landscape entirely with the 12 team, and I'm looking forward to it.
Especially with the schedule. You got Oregon, you got Michigan, Ohio State. I mean, you win, you go 10-2 with that schedule. I think you're in.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
I mean, you might be on the bubble. You're definitely going to be on the bubble, but I think you're in.
I think you might have to make a push to win the Big Ten, though, if you want to. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. Because you got to think about it. There's spots reserved for those lower-tiered teams. Those,
definitely. What I mean? But the thing, I definitely think they're going to take. One thing about expanding the Big Ten is I think the committee is going to look at literally pretty much Big Ten, SEC. I mean, you're going to have the winner of the ACC and the winner of the Big 12, obviously, and then the winner of the Big Ten, SEC. Them 4 get the bye. They're definitely in. But I think when they look at, like, okay, who didn't win their conference, I think they're going to look at Big Ten and SEC mainly. Not exclusively, but those are, I think, the conferences that has the best all-around teams that they're going to pull the 8 seed, 9 seed, 10 seed out of.
Gotcha. No, I think you're right. And that's a hell of a talking point topic that we got to get into. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. We don't have the time tonight, but we're going to talk about that. Don't forget about that. Put a bookmark in that, T, because we're going to be talking about that very soon. Cool. Well, I'll leave it at that, guys. Make sure to check us out on social media. All of our links are in the bottom in the description of this podcast, our link tree, our website, all of our social media. Check us out. reach out to us, give us your suggestions, give us your controversy, give us your backlash. We want all of it. Yeah. So thank you guys so much for joining us tonight on the Gin Sports Network podcast, episode 100. I'm John Jay II. Have a great night.